There comes a moment when the noise of life slows down, and the loudest sound you hear is your own heartbeat in a silent room. After 60, for many, this silence isn't just the absence of noise, but a constant echo of memories. One less plate on the table, a cup that remains untouched in the cupboard, a door that no longer opens with a cheerful, "I'm home." Loneliness for those who once loved deeply, raised children, built routines as a pair doesn't arrive like a storm. It creeps in like a sunset, slowly fading into darkness. When a lifelong partner is gone, or when children grow and go their separate ways, the space left in the house also echoes inside the chest. And it's there that many begin to ask themselves, now what? How do I live like this? This feeling, as painful as it is not a sign of weakness. In fact, it's proof that there was love, that deep bonds existed and left their mark. The challenge begins when loneliness stops being a natural phase of adjustment and turns into an invisible prison, one that quietly steals the will to get up, to cook for yourself, to go out, to dream. According to recent studies by the World Health Organization, over 30% of people over 60 report feeling lonely frequently, especially those who live alone. And loneliness, contrary to what many believe, isn't just an emotional state. It becomes a real risk factor for both physical and mental health, increasing the chances of heart disease, depression, and even cognitive decline. For those who feel this emptiness, it's not helpful to just hear "keep yourself busy" or "go for a walk." The pain needs to be recognized, validated, embraced, because it's not just about not having company. It's about feeling forgotten, invisible, like the world is moving on and doesn't care if you were left behind. There's a loss of identity, of purpose, of shared routine. Even when the house is full of things, what's felt is a huge emptiness between the walls. And this emptiness, when not understood, can be mistaken for laziness, bitterness, or apathy, when in reality, it's pure longing. But here's something important. Loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness hurts. Solitude heals, and this is one of the first steps to turning silence into an ally. Loneliness, when seen as natural grief for the seasons of life that have ended, can become fertile ground for new meaning. But before that, it takes courage. Courage to face the empty afternoons and ask yourself, what still makes my heart beat with excitement? Courage to look at the photo frame and be grateful instead of drowning in what's been lost. Courage to stand up, even if no one will notice. And most of all, courage to accept that there is still time, because where there is life, there is space for new beginnings. In many moving stories told by older adults who have gone through this phase, the turning point didn't come from something huge. Sometimes it was a short walk around the block, an unexpected friendship at the local store, saying yes to a bingo game or a painting class, small gestures that reignite a sleeping spark. Because the truth is that behind the loneliness, there's still a soul that longs to be seen, touched, heard. And when that happens, when someone notices your pain and reaches out, or when you choose to seek connection yourself, something magical happens. The loneliness begins to lose its grip. So if today you woke up in a quiet house, if your breakfast was eaten staring into the void, if your days feel dull and without meaning, take a deep breath. This is just the first chapter of a new stage. The pain you feel now does not define the rest of your story. And if you're here watching this video, trying to understand how to fill this space with something more than longing, know that this is already a brave first step. Life may have changed its rhythm, but it still beats. And the path we'll walk together now is an invitation to rediscover joy, where today there is silence. Because living alone does not mean living in loneliness. A full life still exists, and it begins with the decision to believe it's possible. Loneliness is not just an abstract feeling that settles in the heart during long and silent nights. It is, in fact, a profound phenomenon that affects every cell in our body. When a human being feels isolated, the entire organism reacts as if under threat, and there's a scientific reason for that. Throughout evolution, being alone meant being in danger. In tribal societies, anyone separated from the group was vulnerable to threats, predators, and disease. That's why our bodies learn to activate defense mechanisms whenever they sense isolation. The problem is that in modern life, this alarm doesn't turn off so easily, and persistent loneliness begins to corrode not just our mood, but also our immunity, heart, and even brain. Studies published in the journal Nature and by the National Institute on Aging show that chronic loneliness can increase the risk of heart disease by up to 29% and stroke by up to 32% in older adults. And that's not all. Constantly feeling alone is directly linked to increased levels of hormones like cortisol, the well-known stress hormone. When cortisol remains elevated for long periods, it damages blood vessels, disrupts heart rhythm, raises blood pressure, and even affects glucose metabolism. In other words, loneliness can worsen or even trigger conditions such as hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. Constant sadness is not just emotional. It has very real physical consequences. In the brain, the impact is just as deep. Neuroscience has already shown that a lack of social bonds is linked to a higher risk of cognitive decline and dementia, including Alzheimer's. That's because the brain is a social organ. It grows and stays active through interaction, connection, and emotional stimulation. When these disappear, certain brain areas, especially those related to language, memory, and emotion, begin to deteriorate more quickly. Simply put, the longer someone lives in isolation, the harder it is to keep the mind sharp and the memory intact with age. There are also effects on the immune system. Loneliness acts like a kind of emotional inflammation, altering the response of immune cells. Lonely people get sick more often, recover more slowly, and even respond less effectively to vaccines. The body interprets loneliness as a constant threat, and so it remains in a state of alert, creating silent biological wear and tear. The digestive system is also affected. Indigestion, constipation or diarrhea, loss of appetite or excessive hunger. All of these can be indirect symptoms of this invisible suffering. Nothing is purely psychological. The body and soul are inseparable. But here's the most important part. All of this can be reversed. Science not only explains the damage caused by loneliness, it also reveals the power of reconnection, re-establishing regular social interaction, joining groups, talking to friends, laughing, feeling useful. All of this has an almost medicinal effect. The brain responds to the presence of others by releasing oxytocin, known as the love hormone, which reduces stress, strengthens the immune system, and improves mood. Serotonin and dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitters, also increase with human contact. Even brief conversations, short phone calls, or simple acts of kindness with neighbors can activate these chemicals. This shows that you don't need to be surrounded by people to enjoy the benefits. What matters is having real connections, even if just a few. In addition, neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt, does not disappear with age. Even at 90 or 100 years old, the brain can form new neural connections, especially when we are challenged to learn something new or when we feel emotionally engaged. That means that even after years of loneliness, it's possible to reverse its effects through new habits, new bonds, and new stimuli. It is never too late to rebuild pathways in the brain and in the heart. So if you've been feeling unexplained pain, if fatigue shows up even without physical effort, if your sleep is irregular, or your memory seems to fail more often than before, the cause might lie in this kind of emptiness. And recognizing that is the first step toward healing. Because loneliness, when understood, doesn't have to be a sentence. It can be a signal. And you can use that signal not to close yourself off even more, but to open doors of your home, your body, your mind, and your soul. Science has already proven it. Affection heals, connection protects, and presence, even virtual, can save lives. Life often feels like a road we know well, with familiar landscapes, expected turns, and signs we've seen before. But when someone we love leaves, or when our children follow their own paths, or when routine suddenly dissolves without warning, that road suddenly disappears. What remains is an open and silent field, where everything feels uncertain, and in that moment, many begin to wonder if it's still worth walking, if there's still a destination ahead. The truth is, the place where everything seems to end might actually be the beginning of a new journey. Because most starting over is not failing. It's having the courage to write another chapter when the story seemed to be over. Hope, contrary to what many believe, is not an automatic feeling. It is built. It takes effort, a decision, a choice made again and again each day. And it starts small. Sometimes it begins just by getting out of bed, even when you don't feel like it, by making your own breakfast even without appetite, by going for a walk even when your body begs you to stay. These are simple actions, but they signal to the brain there is still meaning. Science calls this behavioral activation, one of the most effective strategies in treating depression and apathy in older adults. When the body moves, the mind follows. And when actions are repeated, even without enthusiasm at first, the brain's feel-good chemicals begin to reorganize. Neuroscience confirms, action precedes motivation. In other words, you don't have to wait to feel like doing something. You act so the feeling can come. And when we talk about purpose, we're not talking about grand projects or extraordinary missions. We're talking about finding meaning in the simple. Caring for a plant, baking a cake, writing a letter, listening to music, sharing a story with someone. Purpose can be found in small gestures that restore the feeling of being needed. American researcher Emily Esfahani-Smith, a specialist in positive psychology, identified 4 pillars of life, meaning belonging, purpose, transcendence, and personal narrative. And each of these pillars can be rebuilt after 60. Belonging to a group, even a small one, restores connection. Having a reason to get up, even just to feed the birds in the yard, brings back structure. Feeling part of something bigger, whether it's faith, art, or nature, soothes the soul. And telling your own story in a positive way, seeing life as a journey of learning, can bring new meaning even to painful memories. Many older adults who now live with joy and fulfillment began their rebuilding from rock bottom. Real stories show that the turning point often came after a loss. One 72-year-old woman, married for 3 decades and left alone after her husband's death, decided to join a community theater group. At first it was hard. She couldn't memorize lines, felt stage fright and thought it was too late, but she persisted. Today, at 79, she performs for both young and old and says she's never been so happy. Another inspiring story is about a 67-year-old man who, after a lifetime of work, retired and sank into deep loneliness. Then he began writing a journal for his grandchildren, which turned into a blog and then a book. He discovered he still had much to offer, and that realization saved him from an invisible abyss. These examples are not rare exceptions. They're possibilities for anyone willing to try, and trying doesn't mean having all the answers. It means taking one step at a time, even without knowing exactly where it will lead. It's like lighting a candle in the darkness. The light is small, but enough to guide your next steps. And that light can come from within. Because no matter how much life has changed, no matter how far youth seems to be, the ability to dream, to create, and to love remains alive. What you do today can be the start of something new. It doesn't matter how long you've lived in silence or pain, or how many doors have closed. The human heart has an incredible ability to be reborn, as long as it is nurtured with care, patience, and hope. And this is true for everyone, including you who may be watching this video in search of a meaning that seems to have slipped through the cracks of life. That meaning can still be found. It's never too late to plant a new tree, to write a new chapter, to say yes to life again. The road may look different now, but it is still open, and as you walk, new landscapes will begin to appear, and perhaps even unexpected companions to share this new stage. Hope is not a gift, it is a construction. And every new day is a brick you can lay in this new home to come, a life with purpose even in maturity. For much of our lives, we're taught to measure our happiness by how many people surround us. A full house, children running around, the phone ringing, calendars filled with plans. The absence of all this can seem like a sign of failure or sadness. But this is a quiet trap that keeps many from discovering one of the greatest beauties of growing older: the ability to enjoy your own presence. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. On the contrary, it can mark the beginning of a new and deep relationship with yourself, a relationship that often only blossoms once the noise outside finally fades away. The art of feeling well in your own company begins with a courageous act: listening to yourself. Listening to your thoughts without judgment, listening to your memories with tenderness, listening to the desires that have long been asleep. This process, known in psychology as self-compassion, isn't about feeling sorry for yourself. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer to a grandchild, a beloved friend, or a sibling in pain. Research by Dr. Kristin Neff, a global authority on self-compassion, shows that people who develop a more affectionate internal view live with less anxiety, less depression, and a greater sense of well-being, even when physically alone. Yes, it's possible to find joy in solitude, and it doesn't require big investments or radical changes. Sometimes it's a cup of tea in the afternoon, sipped slowly while watching the sky. It's a notebook filled with memories or dreams. It's reconnecting with an old hobby that had been left behind: painting, knitting, playing guitar, reading. When the mind finds something to be enchanted by, time stops being an enemy. The key is doing for yourself what others once did for you. Setting a beautiful table even when alone. Choosing an outfit you love even if no one will see. Caring for your nails, your hair, your skin, not out of vanity but out of love. As if to say to yourself, you still matter. Living well in your own company also means learning to slow down. Many older adults carry, often unknowingly, a guilt for no longer being productive as they once were. But this stage of life is also an invitation to contemplation. Nature, art, music, faith, all of these take on new meaning when there's time to truly absorb them. Eastern philosophy teaches that emptiness is not absence, it is fertile space, and that space, when filled with inner peace, becomes a sanctuary. A crucial step in this process is changing the internal narrative. Instead of thinking I'm alone because no one cares about me, try saying I'm with myself, and for now, that is enough. This doesn't mean closing yourself off from the world. It means recognizing that self-love is the foundation of any new relationship that might arise. As author Clarissa Pinkola Estes said, "The woman who is her own best friend is never alone." And that holds true for all of us. Men or women, young or old, becoming your own friend is one of the greatest achievements of adult life. And if you still feel like you can't enjoy being alone, that's okay. It's a process. Start small. Set aside 10 minutes a day to do something just for yourself. Remember what used to make you smile before life got so busy. Talk to yourself out loud, write letters to yourself, read your memories aloud. Little by little, the stranger called me becomes an old friend, and with that, the fear of silence turns into peace. The house may still be empty of people, but it becomes full of meaning. Being well with yourself is not selfish, it is wisdom. Those who learn to be enough for themselves never again depend on others to be happy, and paradoxically, that is what draws the best companions. Those who radiate inner peace invite peace to live with them. So before you try to fill the void with distractions, try filling it with presence, your own presence. Because in the end, it's with yourself that you'll spend every day of your life, and that relationship deserves to be the most beautiful one of all. Friendship is one of the most precious bonds in life, but as the years go by, many of these ties begin to fade. Some friends leave too soon, others take different paths, and some simply get lost in the rush of life. And then at 60, 70, or 80 years old, many realize that their social circle has grown smaller, and with it, the brightness of certain mornings. But here is a powerful truth. It is never too late to make new friends. The need for connection is a constant in human life at every stage, and with age comes a unique wisdom, the ability to cultivate deeper, truer, and more lasting relationships. The first step is understanding that it's not about replacing old friends or lost connections. Every person is irreplaceable, but the human soul is elastic. It can stretch to welcome new presences, new forms of affection. Making friends in later life is often more liberating than in youth, because there's no longer a need to impress, to fit in, or to compete. There is time and clarity to see others with empathy, and to offer your own presence with greater wholeness. And that in itself creates fertile ground for sincere connections. But how do you make new friends when your routine has become so quiet? The answer begins with movement. The world won't come knocking if you don't open the door. You have to go out, of the house, of your comfort zone, of the belief that no one cares about me. Believe this, there are thousands of people just like you also searching for companionship, conversation, and connection. Senior centers, book clubs, dance classes, choirs, walking groups, churches, volunteer groups, all these places are gathering points for souls that still want to live fully. A famous study from Harvard University, which followed hundreds of people over 80 years, found that the most important factor for happiness and longevity wasn't money, status, or fame. It was relationships. People with strong emotional bonds live longer, suffer fewer illnesses, handle stress better, and enjoy life more. And those relationships can begin at any moment. including today. It's important to remember that friendships don't arrive fully formed. They must be nurtured. They take time, patience, listening, and mutual effort. Maybe at first you'll feel out of place. Maybe the other person is also unsure. Maybe the conversation doesn't flow right away. But that's part of the process. The key is to persist with gentleness. Set up a second meeting, start a new topic, show real interest, and gradually, a smile becomes a routine. A routine becomes a friendship, and friendship, when it blooms, has the power to rejuvenate not only your face, but your heart. Technology can also be a great ally in this process. Messaging apps, Facebook groups for seniors, active YouTube comment sections, experience sharing forums, all of these provide opportunities to meet people with similar interests. There are even friendship apps specifically designed for older adults, like Amigos do Bem or local digital inclusion programs. You don't need to be a tech expert, just learn the basics. And believe this, learning something new at 70 or 80 is, in itself, an act of youth. If you feel embarrassed, afraid, or unsure, that's okay, it's normal. But ask yourself what hurts more, trying and maybe it not working out, or continuing alone with no one to share a good laugh with. Because loneliness can be overcome, not with big crowds, but with a single person who looks into your eyes and truly listens. And that person might be closer than you think, in the bakery line, in the park, at church, or in the neighbor who also spends quiet afternoons alone. Life still wants to see you surrounded by affection, and the first step toward that isn't finding someone, it's choosing to open yourself to others. Because when the heart opens, the world responds, and every new friendship is like a window opening to a wider sky. You don't have to walk this road alone. And even if you've spent years believing that no one will care anymore, know this. At the right time, the right companion will appear, but you must go out into the world, even if only slowly. There is deep wisdom in understanding that self-care is not a luxury nor a whim. It is a vital necessity, and more than that, it is an act of love, of respect, and of rebuilding one's own dignity. When loneliness knocks at the door, it often comes with a subtle discouragement that slowly seeps into the little things. First, you lose the will to make the bed. Then, the desire to prepare a nice meal fades. Soon, yesterday's comfy clothes become the uniform for every day. And before you realize it, your routine has become mere survival, not life. But it's precisely at this point that something can change, because it's possible to reverse this cycle with simple gestures, repeated gently every day. Taking care of yourself is rekindling the most important bond in life, the one you have with yourself. It starts in the morning. Waking up and opening the windows to let the sunlight in is not just a physical act, it's symbolic. The light that enters the house also enters the soul. Morning sunlight exposure, beyond its symbolism, stimulates serotonin production, a neurotransmitter responsible for well-being and mood balance. A light walk for 15 to 30 minutes a day, even just around the block, boosts circulation, improves heart health, and releases endorphins, which ease stress and bring lightness to the spirit. Another essential pillar of this care is mindful eating. Eating well after 60 is not just about nutrition. It is also a gesture of respect for your body. Preparing a meal for yourself, choosing colorful foods, arranging a beautiful plate, sitting down at the table, all of it tells your brain, I matter. Studies show that a diet rich in vegetables, lean proteins, fiber, and healthy fats has a direct impact on mental health, helping to prevent depression and anxiety. Even if you live alone, cooking with affection is important. Mealtime can become a ritual of self-care and joy, not just a task to check off. Sleep is also key. Many older adults struggle with insomnia, and it's often worsened by emotional isolation. Creating a sleep routine with regular hours, dim lighting in the evening, soft music or light reading helps the brain understand it's time to rest. Sleeping well is essential for hormonal balance, memory, and even immune function. It's not just about resting the body, it's giving the mind a chance to reorganize and dream. Self-care also includes hygiene, appearance, and self-esteem. Taking a calm shower, choosing a nice outfit, applying lotion, brushing your hair, even if no one is going to see. These gestures nourish self-worth and help drive away apathy. It's not about vanity, it's about reminding yourself every day, I deserve care. And once this thought takes hold, it begins to influence all others. A cared-for body leads to a more active mind. A more active mind leads to a more open heart, and a willing heart is the first step toward rediscovering joy. Another powerful aspect is organizing your home and your time. Living in a clean, tidy, and harmonious space brings peace. Your home reflects the state of your mind. Setting a schedule, making a list of simple tasks, planning small moments of pleasure throughout the day, like watching a movie, calling someone, tending to your plants. All of this gives structure to your day and helps fight the feeling of emptiness. Routine is a quiet antidote to sadness. Finally, it's essential to cultivate acts of kindness toward yourself. Listen to yourself without judgment. Be gentle during hard times. Allow yourself to rest without guilt. Forgive yourself for past mistakes. Say to the mirror with honesty, "You're doing well even with all this." Psychology confirms that people who develop this more compassionate inner dialogue enjoy better mental health, more energy, and live with greater ease. Emotional loneliness cannot be healed by external company alone. It begins to fade when your own self becomes a place of comfort, and that is built through routines. It doesn't matter if you're 60, 70, 80, or 90 years old. Every act of self-care is a brick in the rebuilding of your joy. And even if it takes time, even if there are setbacks, each day is a new chance. Taking care of yourself is a quiet declaration. I'm still here, and I still deserve to live well. There is a kind of pain that seems to have no name. It doesn't bleed, doesn't show up in medical tests, but it weighs on the shoulders, tightens the voice, and drains the days. It is the pain of absence, of loss, of longing that silently tightens the chest. Many older adults carry this feeling after children grow up, partners pass away, or friends drift apart with time. The first reaction is often withdrawal, closing off, going quiet, slowly fading. But there is a secret shared by those who've overcome this stage with wisdom. Pain doesn't have to be the end. It can be the beginning of a mission. And when we choose to transform our suffering into service to others, something powerful happens. Loneliness begins to give way to purpose, and the emptiness, once suffocating, begins to fill with meaning. Studies from Stanford University show that people who practice generosity and service to others experience higher levels of emotional well-being, self-esteem, and longevity. That's because helping activates brain regions linked to pleasure and connection, releasing hormones like oxytocin, the love molecule, which reduces stress, improves heart health, and deepens the sense of belonging. And the most beautiful part? Anyone can help, even in simple ways. You don't need to be strong, wealthy, or perfect to be useful. All it takes is the willingness to reach out. Because in truth, the hand that reaches out to others is the same one that rescues itself. There are countless ways to turn your story into healing for someone else. Many older adults find purpose through volunteer work, visiting hospitals, preparing meals for those in need, teaching children, talking to other seniors in care homes, caring for abandoned animals, offering time and a listening ear to someone who also feels alone. Others discover that their long-dormant talents can be shared, teaching how to sew, play an instrument, bake bread, write poetry. The knowledge you've gained over a lifetime hasn't lost its value. On the contrary, it may be exactly what someone else needs right now. Pain, when shared, becomes lighter, and when someone sees themselves in your eyes, when you become a mirror of hope for another person, healing begins. Many seniors say they only discovered their true mission after the age of 70. Like the woman who, after losing her husband, began hosting orphan children on weekends, offering affection, play, and advice. Or the man who, after surviving a stroke, began sharing his story in support groups for men battling depression. These people didn't deny the pain they felt, but they chose to give it new meaning. And you might be thinking, but I don't even have strength for myself. How can I help anyone else? And the answer is simple. Helping others isn't about having everything figured out. It's about offering what you have. Sometimes it's just listening. Sometimes it's making a call, preparing a bowl of soup, or sending a kind message. In a world where many feel invisible, simply seeing someone else is already an act of love. And the more involved you become, the more you realize that pain doesn't stop you from living. It can teach you how to live with more compassion, more empathy, and more truth. Serving others is also a way to break the cycle of isolation. Contact with new people, stories, needs, and joys rekindles a sense of belonging. You stop being a spectator of life and return to being the main character. And even if no one recognizes or applauds you, your heart knows, and it answers with a warmth that no loneliness can silence. A mission, when born from pain, transforms not only the world around us, but the world within us. So, look at your story, at the marks it has left, and ask yourself, what can I do with all of this? Because nothing was in vain. Not a single tear, not a single silence, not one missed hug. Everything can be a seed, and when you choose to plant those seeds in other lives, they bloom right back toward you. Turning pain into mission is giving meaning to your very existence, and in that meaning, loneliness dissolves. For a long time, it was believed that the digital world belonged only to the young, a territory filled with strange slang, confusing buttons, and social networks that felt more like mazes than bridges. But this idea is being disproven by a quiet revolution. Older adults who have discovered in technology a new way to love, to communicate, to learn, and above all, to reconnect with life. The truth is that when used wisely, the internet doesn't isolate, it brings people closer. It can be the bridge between a silent house and the warmth of a reunion, even if through a screen. And that bridge is within reach of everyone, even for those who've never pushed a button before. Digital inclusion among seniors grows every year. According to recent IBGE data, the number of people over 60 using mobile phones to access the internet now exceeds 70%. That means millions of older adults are discovering new ways to socialize, study, shop, laugh, and even be moved by what they see and share online. And the impact on emotional health is enormous. Having internet access is having access to the world. It means being able to talk to a grandson who lives far away, watch videos of traditional recipes, join support groups, take free classes, schedule medical appointments, and above all, feel present, active, and up to date. Of course, it's common to feel fear or insecurity when facing so much technology. After all, no one is born knowing how to use a smartphone or navigate apps. But learning can be light, enjoyable, and transformative. Today, there are countless free in-person and online courses designed especially for older adults. Platforms like eSenior, Connected Senior, and projects like Digital Inclusion for the Elderly teach the basics: how to make video calls, send WhatsApp messages, use social media safely, and even find reliable health information. Learning something new after 60 stimulates the brain, boosts self-esteem, and opens doors many thought were closed forever. The internet can also be a powerful ally in breaking through loneliness. Joining social media groups, online forums focused on gardening, sewing, cooking, or spirituality lets people connect with others who share the same values. Apps like Zoom and Google Meet allow for virtual get-togethers with friends, book clubs, conversations, and even family reunions. Many older adults, even those living alone, have started attending virtual coffee rooms, chatting every morning with others in similar situations. These are spaces for listening, laughter, and warmth, and all of it happens with just a tap on the screen. But it's important to remember, technology must be used way consciously and safely. Teaching seniors to recognize online scams, avoid sharing personal information, and browse only trusted websites is just as important as teaching them how to use a phone. And this responsibility also lies with families, institutions, and society. Inclusion means teaching with patience, with respect, and without infantilization. Every older person is capable of learning. They just need to be taught with care and clarity. More than convenience, the internet can be a source of affection and inspiration. YouTube channels with positive messages, old songs, prayer videos, series, arts and crafts classes, or history lectures, all of these nourish the soul. Many older adults are deeply moved when, with a single click, they rediscover songs from their childhood, movies that marked their youth, shows that bring back memories. Others discover they can uncreate content, share recipes, tell their stories, record videos, write, and by doing so, they begin to inspire thousands of people around the world. Technology, when used consciously, has no age limit. And more than connecting devices, it can connect hearts. It can turn loneliness into sharing, silence into conversation, longing into images, and distance into presence. It's like learning a new language. At first it feels difficult, but little by little it becomes a bridge to new worlds. So if you still feel distant from the digital world, take a deep breath, one step at a time. Ask for help. Try it out. Make mistakes without guilt. Learning is an act of courage, and courage is something you've already proven you have, because living is always a new beginning. And if the world is increasingly online, you can be part of it too, sir, with heart, with wisdom, and with love. When the outside world falls silent, when voices fade and the home becomes a space of echoes, many turn inward, searching for answers that reason alone cannot always provide. It's in that moment, when the noise of life gives way to the subtle sound of the soul, that spirituality presents itself not as a doctrine, but as a quiet force that sustains, soothes, and embraces. For many older adults living alone, faith becomes the last invisible thread connecting them to the mystery of existence, to hope, to meaning. And it doesn't require temples or crowds, only a heart willing to trust in the unseen. Spirituality can take many forms. For some, it manifests through religion, daily prayers, reading sacred texts, attending Mass, services, novenas, or guided meditations. For others, it arises from nature, from deep silence, from art, music, or quiet contemplation. Some find it in caring for a plant, petting an animal, or writing in a journal. Because at its core, being spiritual means recognizing that there is something greater than our pain, something we cannot see but can feel. And that feeling gives breath to the days when loneliness feels overwhelming. Many studies confirm the benefits of faith and spirituality in senior health. Research from Duke University in the United States shows that older adults who maintain an active spiritual life have lower rates of depression, better recovery after surgery, greater longevity, and stronger emotional resilience. That's because faith activates parts of the brain linked to compassion, forgiveness, and hope, emotions that are as powerful as any medicine. Praying, for example, reduces stress levels, slows heart rate, and strengthens the immune system. Having a spiritual purpose is like having a lighthouse that stays lit, even when everything around goes dark. What's beautiful is that faith doesn't demand perfection. It embraces the older adult who feels forgotten, who carries regrets, who has faced loss and still believes. It welcomes those who pray with words, with gestures, or even in silence, because there are prayers that don't need to be spoken, only felt. In times when physical company is rare, the divine presence, however one understands it, can fill empty spaces with an inexplicable sense of companionship. Many report feeling that presence at sunrise, when closing their eyes, or while listening to a piece of music that touches the soul. That's not imagination, it's connection. To nurture this inner peace, you can create small daily rituals. A prayer corner in the home, a lit candle, a psalm or verse read slowly, a soft spiritual song playing during breakfast. These simple moments form a routine of spiritual nourishment. You can also watch Mass, services, or religious talks online. Many churches and communities stream live messages, and prayer groups gather via apps, connecting people who've never met but share the same faith. Spirituality also helps us face the fear of death, of eternal loneliness, of the end. It allows us to accept the passage of time with more serenity, understanding that each season holds its beauty and purpose. Many older adults, as they deepen their spiritual lives, discover a new youth of the soul, a lightness that comes from trusting that life continues somehow, and that everything lived has meaning. As poet Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote, "The only journey is the one within." And if today you feel distant from the faith you once had, or never cultivated spirituality, know that it is never too late to begin this path. Just close your eyes, take a deep breath and say, "I'm here, and I'm willing to feel." It doesn't matter what name you give to that feeling, God, universe, light, love, spirit. What matters is that it can dwell within you. And when it does, the house fills with meaning. Silence becomes music, and loneliness gives way to an invisible but deep companionship. Because in the end, that's what spirituality is. A bridge between the visible and the invisible, between what is missing and what remains, between what has passed and what still lives on. And that bridge, built with faith, can support any journey, especially when it is walked alone. There comes a moment in life when it becomes necessary to reorganize your inner world, not because things went wrong, but because life has changed its shape. The time that once was shared with others now belongs solely to you. The routine that used to follow the rhythm of the family now moves to the beat of your own will. And in this new scenario, what may seem like loneliness can actually reveal itself as freedom. The chance to build a new life based on your choices, tastes, and values. But for that you need a plan, a map, even a simple one, to guide your days with purpose, balance, and joy. Because living alone doesn't mean living without direction. The first step in building this plan is to look inward. What are your true needs today? What brings you pleasure? What makes you uncomfortable? What have you always wanted to do but never had time for? These questions are the foundation of self-awareness. Many older adults discover, when answering these questions honestly, that there is still so much life waiting to be lived. And more importantly, they realize they can now live on their own terms, with more calm, authenticity, and fewer expectations. This new chapter can be the freest one yet. Next, it's time to create a balanced routine. It's not about filling your schedule with obligations, but rather about shaping your time in a way that works for you. A healthy routine for someone living alone might ideally include a regular time to wake up and go to bed, mindful eating with planned enjoyable meals, daily light physical activity, walking, stretching, dancing, moments of leisure and pleasure, movies, reading, music, crafts, spaces for connection, calls, social groups, meaningful exchanges, mentally stimulating activities, crosswords, reading, courses, time for spirituality or meditation if it resonates with you, and, very importantly, free time for stillness, reflection, and simply being. Creating a No's affection calendar can help a lot in this process. In it, you organize not just tasks, but moments of care and kindness toward yourself. How about saving Wednesdays to try a new recipe? Saturdays to visit someone or do something out of the house? Sundays to watch a film that moves you? These small weekly milestones make all the difference and help keep your spirits up. Seeing time this way gives meaning to each day, even when lived alone. Another powerful tool is a gratitude journal. In it, you can write each day, or at least each week, 3 things you're grateful for, even if they seem small. A ray of sunshine, a tasty cup of coffee, a happy memory, a message from someone. This practice is scientifically proven to improve mood, increase the sense of well-being, and reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression. It's like training your eyes to notice the beauty in everyday life. And since every plan needs goals, why not define some realistic dreams? Even if simple, learning something new, writing your memoirs, organizing old photos, taking a trip somewhere nearby, creating a YouTube channel to tell stories, starting a small garden, joining an online group. These dreams are fuel for the soul. They're what push your days forward with hope. But the most important part of this guide to a fulfilling life is to welcome difficult days with compassion. Not every day will be good, and not every sunrise will come with ease, and that's okay. The plan isn't meant to be followed rigidly, but with love. It's an anchor, not a prison. It helps remind you, even in the midst of sadness, that life goes on, and that you have the power to shape it with care and intention. You've come this far with a suitcase full of unique experiences. Every wrinkle carries a story. Every silence has weight and meaning. And now, with more time for yourself, it's possible to sort through that suitcase, release what no longer serves you, lovingly keep what still matters, and move forward lighter. A full life doesn't require crowds, it requires presence. And being present within yourself is one of the greatest gifts that maturity can offer. For a long time, silence was seen as the enemy. It arrived after the voices were gone, after the door closed, after the laughter became memory. For many older adults, silence became a synonym for loneliness, abandonment, and forgetfulness. It filled the rooms of the house with echoes of longing and painted the days in pale shades of absence. But what if silence wasn't the villain in this story? What if instead of pain it held a quiet invitation, an invitation to peace, to reconnect with your own heart, to a new way of listening to life, now with more lightness, more presence, more truth? The end of loneliness doesn't mean the end of silence. On the contrary, it marks the beginning of a new relationship with it, a relationship of acceptance, of respect, even of love. Because there is a silence that wounds, but there is another that heals. The first is the silence of imposed absence. The second, the silence of full presence. When we manage to turn the house into a home, time into an ally, and solitude into companionship, silence stops hurting. It begins to cradle. It becomes a pause, not a void. A space for the soul to breathe, not a hole where pain echoes. Eastern philosophy teaches us that silence is not the absence of sound, but pure presence. It's within silence that we hear our breath, that we feel our body more clearly, that we listen to thoughts once drowned out by the noise of the world. In silence, clarity is born, intuition arises, and calm unfolds. Over time, we learn that we don't need to fill every moment with words, noise, or distractions. We can simply be, and that is enough. For many older adults who have overcome loneliness, reconnecting with silence was liberating. They learned that being alone doesn't mean being lonely, that sitting on the porch with a cup of tea and listening to the birds, the wind, and the heartbeat is a privilege, that walking slowly, watching the morning light filter through the leaves, smelling coffee being slowly brewed, these are deep ways of connecting with life. Peace doesn't shout, it whispers, and those who hear it never forget. This does not mean denying the importance of relationships. Having company, receiving visits, sharing laughter and conversation, all of that is still essential. But it means that when others are not around, life can still be full. The secret is not to depend entirely on the external to find meaning. It's learning to enjoy your own presence as you would enjoy a garden, one you've cultivated with patience and love. At first, it may feel strange, but with time, silence becomes melody. It begins to tell stories, cradle memories, and offer answers. Cultivating this inner state takes practice. Simple moments of meditation, even brief ones, can help. Lighting a candle at the end of the day, listening to instrumental music, reading something uplifting out loud, closing your eyes and giving thanks for what you have, all of these are ways to welcome silence into your routine. And each small act reinforces one truth: you are capable of living well with yourself. Solitude, when embraced, becomes a source of joy, freedom, and wisdom. The truth is, we were never truly alone. Because as long as there are memories, dreams, faith, and awareness, there will always be a presence inhabiting our days, the presence of your own story, of the essence that remains. And that presence doesn't require noise. It blooms in stillness. So, if silence is your companion today, embrace it. Breathe with it. Dance with it. Learn to listen to it, as you would an old friend whispering life's secrets. Because in the end, the peace we so often seek isn't in others, the past or the future. It's here, now, in the silence that wraps around you and says, you are home. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you still beats strong. Maybe a quiet hope, maybe a desire for change, maybe an echo in your heart saying, I deserve more. And you're right, because life, even after so many losses, disappointments, and silences, is still generous to those who choose to keep walking. There is still time to start again. There are still new paths for those brave enough to retrace their steps. There is still joy, even for those who live alone. Throughout this guide, we explored not only the challenges of loneliness in later life, but more importantly, the hidden possibilities within it. We discovered that silence can be an ally, that self-care is a daily act of self-love, that friendships can still blossom, that the body can regain strength, that the mind can expand, that the soul can be warmed. That time, the same time that once felt slow and empty, can be reorganized like a garden, with new flowers, with fruit, with shade and sunshine. We live in a society that often makes older adults invisible. But you are not invisible. You carry stories, wisdom, and value. The world needs you. Your gestures, your words, your listening, your experience, all of it is fertile seed for other lives. And more than that, you need you. You need to see yourself with the same care a grandfather gives a grandchild, the way a grandmother cradles a baby, with tenderness, with patience, with faith. The most important relationship you can build from now on is with yourself. You can love again. You can travel, study, create, laugh, dance, write, plant, teach. You can. Even if you've been doubted, even if you've forgotten that, even if no one else believes in it, it's enough that Chakayuas believe. Life is still pulsing within you, and where there is life, there is room for joy. And where there is joy, loneliness cannot stay. Because joy fills, transforms, connects. So take a deep breath, raise your chin, Open your chest and say to yourself, I choose me. Let that choice be your starting point. Let every step from here on be a stair toward a fuller life, even if the house stays quiet, even if your children take time to call, even if your partner doesn't return. Because you are enough. And when that becomes true inside, the whole world transforms. Loneliness may knock at your door, but you are the one who opens it. And today, perhaps for the first time in a long while, you can choose to open that door, not to emptiness, but to yourself. You are home. You are companionship. You are the path. You are the healing. You are the beginning. If this video touched your heart, leave a comment sharing which part moved you most and send it to someone who also needs to rediscover the joy of being with themselves.